All right, the next section here is going to deal with importing customer data. That is an asset and unique locations data table that we're going to create. Typically, customers don't have those segregated. What we have seen is customers will provide maybe a CSV or a tab separated variable file that lists all of their assets, and they'll have a column that identifies a location code. Well, then you have to actually run some analysis on that to pluck out the things that are unique locations. So our starting point here is going to be importing customer supplied data, but then afterwards we'll run some scripts to create this asset table and also the unique locations table, right? These two. But we begin again with the import of a customer supplied data file. I'll give you an example of what this is going to look like here. I have something that is tab separated data. I like that better than CSV because it is it gets away from the use of quotes, which can be problematic. And commas are commonly in a description field or in other fields, so you don't really want to have that complication. Tab separated variable data is probably the easiest to deal with. Plus, you can copy and paste it straight from Excel into a notepad file like this, and you'll see those tabs. The one additional column of data that has to be added to those customer supplied files, however, is this company ID column. And so as we pull in a customer's full list of assets, we're going to supply a company ID value for however we want to subdivide that total list. And in this case, I have something that is, I think, 580,000 records. It's fairly beefy. And we're going to import this into the database as a table that AssetWorks won't use, but we'll use it as a means of running our scripts on it to create these asset and location tables. So we begin by right-clicking our AssetWorks database within Management Studio, and then we'll say Tasks, and then we'll say Import Flat File, right? And it'll start a wizard that will lead us through this process of locating the file to be imported. So I'm going to hit Browse. I'm going to go find that. I think I put it on my desktop here. List all file types, and it is this one. It's important to remember that there are certain data columns that have to have some value. They cannot be null. The things would be the asset name, the location field must not be null, and also the company ID cannot be null. It has to be a value that's already in the company ID table, right? And here I'll just call this, I'm going to call it data import, right? That's going to be my new table name. And we'll follow through this process. I think it actually happens reasonably quick. I am going to select all the defaults. If you go through this, you'll see that in the location field, I did have some customer supplied values of null, and I put in a value of X so I can at least identify, okay, it's not a real location. The customer didn't know where it was. It's probably something that is been surplused already, but I'm giving it a real name, okay? And we'll hit next. And now we're going to go ahead and we're going to identify the things that can have nulls, right? I'll select all of that, and and then I'm going to unselect the things that have to have a value. The EE number, in this case, that's the asset ID. That has to be unique and a value. The location and the company ID, they cannot be empty. They cannot have null values, okay? And then the primary key here is a combination of that and that, because you could have an asset number at two locations that might be the same value. At least that's how it is with this set of customer data. So the company ID and asset ID, that combination has to be unique, right? And then other things that I do here is not 100% sure if this is required, but in order to make it consistent, the data type consistent with what AssetWorks uses, I simply go in and copy those things. Let's see, status. Probably can use the same one there. I think location, site is an integer, but I'm going to call it a text field. Okay. CSN, EIL. The rest of these, this is an integer. Company ID is an integer. And let's see, there's one more here that is, if I make this varchar max and copy that, description is definitely longer than 50 characters many times, so is the model number, sometimes serial number. I think I'll do that, and that. All right. I don't see anything here that's probably going to be violating those limits, so I think we're good there, and I'm going to hit next, hit finish, and we'll wait until it works. I think it's certainly less than a minute, but it's around 30 to 45 seconds, so I'm going to just pause briefly. Okay, and this laptop, which isn't as powerful as maybe another system, it probably took a minute and a half, maybe a little bit more, but we do end up in success, and we're done at this point, and I can close it. And if I look again at refreshing my my database and hit tables, you'll now see I have a data import file, and I'm just going to say select the top 1,000 rows, and you'll see all of the customer supply data is now here, including company ID. All right, so that's how we start. We create this import file within Management Studio that pulls all of this data in, and I've filtered the customer supply data to make sure that there is a value for the location column, and in this case, their asset ID number, and also that there is a company ID value for each and every asset. Once I've edited that in Excel, I can just export it or cut and paste it into Notepad, and I get a tab separated variable file, which I can pull in. And in the next video, we'll talk about running the SQL scripts on here to pull out from this table a list of unique locations. That is the next step. We don't do assets first, we do locations first, okay? And that's in the next video.